Good evening, beautiful people. I'd like to welcome you to the launch of my new web series entitled Off the Record, but on My Mind. In these little web series episodes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share sometimes perspectives, sometimes experiences, and sometimes just all out rants about a wide variety of topics. The thing that I'm excited the most about is that I'm actually soliciting topics from people on both my Facebook and my IG friends list. So if you have a topic that you want to see a guy sit back and philosophize about, or sit and dissect, or give a historical account, or just have a flat out meltdown rant, I'm your guy. And so this first episode is going to be a rant. Ironically, I think the people they like the drama, they like the excess and bravado. So I had a question. Someone wanted me to talk about the use of the N word today in modern society, and so I, for one, have a lot to say about it. So here it goes. I used to think that the worst thing that a person could ever do, a black person that is, could do, is to use the N word. I thought that that was an absolute asinine and just a counterproductive thing in which a person could engage in. And I still believe that to be true, but I don't think that that's the worst thing that's happened surrounding this word. It's been a uptick in the last few years, thanks to the music, thanks to the cultural push, and thanks to things like movies, etc., that have actually made the N word even more mainstream. But one thing that really just perplexes me is the use of the N word by non-black people, and in particular, people of color. You know, Asian Americans, Hispanic, Latinos, for example. It seems as if there's been a increase in the use of the word by people in those communities, and it just blows my mind, right? I've had a long beef with black men that decide to use the word because I just don't buy into this whole concept that we're going to take the word back and we're going to take it and turn it into a term of endearment, and that we're going to somehow flip it and make it a positive thing, especially when there's so many contradictions that just come up with the uses of the word, right? The first obvious contradiction is who gets to say it, under what circumstances, and if this word truly does not have any historical baggage or any sting to it, then why does it matter if other people say it, right? And so it creates a whole bunch of ambiguity. It creates a whole bunch of, just head scratching, and from my opinion, a lot of ignorance, right? So for those, and I do have some viewers that are of this new generation, and so I'm going to start out with a little historical context, right? Because just to presume that everyone understands just how hateful and spiteful and egregious the word is, there's a lot of young folks walking around these days that just don't quite understand the origins and don't understand why this word is not something that should just be thrown around, right? And so historically, let's just be clear, racist white people back in our yesteryear created this word pretty much to denote an African slave who was ignorant, who was childlike, right? And someone that was very feeble, just didn't have a high, level of intelligence, didn't speak well, didn't have good processing and good problem solving skills. And the reality is that back when this word was created, a lot of my ancestors, a lot of our ancestors fit that bill, right? But this wasn't something that we was just born with and had to carry with us to the end of our old age, right? This is something that systematically was put in place to keep us in bondage, right? It was illegal. It was against the law for slaves to learn how to read and write. So in the antebellum South in particular, right, it was very, very intentional and customary to keep black folk uneducated, keeping them, even if they were at the tender age of 48, talking real childlike, thinking very, very primitively, and thinking with very, very surface level ideas, thoughts, and functions, right? That's how they can keep them locked onto a plantation, just picking cotton and doing other rote memory things all day for the rest of their life, right? So the term itself is meant to denote someone that is absolutely ignorant, right? Somebody that's, for lack of for a better term, a bird brain, right? And so when it was first used, on black people, right? We didn't have any say so. And after a certain period of time, it becomes internalized. If someone calls you anything for a long period of time, that's what you start to identify with. That's what you start to internalize yourself as, and others that look just like you. So before long, when the self-hate really started to become embedded in our psyche, it became customary for black people to call other black people the N-word as well. But trust me, when black people originally started calling each other the N-word, they meant it just in the same way and manner that the racist slave masters and those in the antebellum South that really despised and hated black people and felt that we were inferior. They meant it that exact same way. So the word from its inception had a negative connotation to it, right? It wasn't a term of endearment. And even when we got to the point where we accepted it and said, hey, you know what, well, we're going to make sure that we actually share in this collective struggle together. And if we're going to call each other that and we're going to soften it up a little bit, we're just recognizing that we're like two peas in a pod, right? Or we're just sardines in the can. We're all pretty much stuck in this same rut in the American society, right? Antebellum South, and even after the Civil War was fought and slavery ended outright and legally, right? So you fast forward to when black folk get together in modern times, 1900s, right? Moving into the 2000s. This term is something that was used as a form of defiance, right? It was, I can say this out loud, and somehow it got kind of twisted and morphed into this little thought process that we can say it to ourselves. But if white people or non-black people say it, then, oh my God, that is a surefire sign of racist, right? And so here's where the contradiction really becomes solid and becomes clear. If this word doesn't have that same historical punch to it, then that means that anyone should be able to say it. But we've seen time and time again that if someone outside of the African American black ethnicity or race says that to a black person, all of a sudden it hurts our feelings. It enrages us. It incenses us. It makes us feel like, our next logical response is to either resort to violence or to take what you said and move it to the next level energy wise, right? So how can we take something that still has that kind of social and intellectual and emotional punch and then say, no, I'm going to say it to someone that looks like me, but I'm going to use it as a term of endearment, right? We can look at how it was actually weaponized and how a little panacea was kind of added to it when hip hop music really became prevalent in the late 1980s, early 1990s. But the reality is this: just because this word has been thrown around and it's been placed in music and in movies and any of the subcultural norms that black people have participated in that create some sort of entertainment value, doesn't mean that it's something that should be said, right? It's still has not been able to shake itself from that measure of sounding very ignorant. When you hear two black people talking and they call each other the N-word to people passing by, especially people that are non-blacks, it immediately signals to them that they are just like what these slave masters in yesteryear said. They're ignorant, right? They look at us like we're stupid when we say that word. How is it that you can say that this word hurts you and that this word is something that still has emotional, right? Still has psychological, right? Still has spiritual damage that it brings along with it when it's said by the wrong person. But you turn around and you say it to someone that looks like you with so much deference, right? And with so much adulation in some cases. I'm an N, you an N, we an N, but no one else can call us an N, right? That sends the wrong signal to everyone else that is non-black, right? So then you start to have this little mutation of it, right? You start having people outside of the black culture now starting to participate in the black culture. And what they look at is like, hey, when these individuals are turning and looking to each other, they're saying this word, they're singing along, they're high-fiving, they're having a great time, they're hugging, right? It's something that they're saying that seems to be something that is now communal or now tribal, right, in a sense. And so when these individuals decide they want to participate in the culture, they want to be part of the black experience, whether they're conscientious or of that fact or not, they're still deciding that they want to play around in black land until they no longer want to do it. And then they can go back to being whatever ethnic group that they identify with, right, at the core of it all. But what it looks like is that now we have a generation of young people that think that this word is just a word for homie or just a word for friend or just a word for my compadre when that's not the case. And they find out real quick, right? You have a non-black person say that word in a space where it's all black people, and all of a sudden everything stops. Everybody that's black knows this little stereotypical little metaphor when they say, hey, man, you go into this one horse town and it's all white folks. If a black person walk into the bar, all of a sudden the music stops. And now all of a sudden everybody's looking around like, what the hell is going on? Right? The same thing happens when non-black people decide that they want to participate in the black culture and they want to use this word, right? It's all fun and games. Everybody's cool. Everybody's having a good time. But the first time they decide they're going to let that word come out of their mouth to a black person, all of a sudden it's like, what the hell, right? That's where the biggest hypocrisy is, in my opinion, because we cannot look at each other with a straight face and say that we have taken this word and we've taken away the sting, right? We've taken away the historical context to it all. And now we're using it in a way that is fraternal, in a way that causes us to actually be able to identify with one another a little bit more closely, right? And then when someone else outside of our ethnic group or our race says that, now all of a sudden we're absolutely appalled, right? We're incensed by it, or we're hurt to the core of ourselves, right? I see way too many YouTube videos, way too many videos on World Star where someone outside of the black community says that word and all of a sudden black folk are up in arms, right? That creates a further thought in others' minds that we just don't quite have it together. We don't get it, right? And to be quite frank, it still is a sign of ignorance, right? If the word still has the power to cause us to draw back to something that we have not experienced in our own life, but has been passed on through DNA traumas from our ancestors. And we say that anytime we hear that word coming from someone outside of someone that looks like us, it just brings up and brings to the surface the fact that we still are struggling with our own identity and our own form of acceptance here in the United States of America. Then why do we turn around and say it to each other just so flippantly and just so casually? Just doesn't make sense to me. It's never made sense to me. I spent more than half of my life using that word because I was in ignorance. I use that word because it was taught to me. Everyone that looked like me in my community, most people that look like me in my community use that word. The music that I consumed, right? The movies, the videos, all that I watched and witnessed, it had it in there. It was woven into the subcultural context. And so because I wanted to participate in the hip hop community, I just felt like that was just a part of it. But at some point I did reach a level of awareness and awakeness about this particular topic. I remember, a decade plus ago when there was a conversation about maybe taking this word and symbolically burying it, right? Taking the word, writing it down, putting it in the casket and burying it, and encouraging any and every black person and everyone else to just refrain from using this, right? That didn't really gain a whole bunch of traction, but it did give me an opportunity to kind of think about, why do I use it, right? And how do I typically feel about it? I'll tell you how I feel about it. If I'm in the company of a black person in particular and they use that word, I correct them immediately. I'm like, hey, you know what? That's cool. That's how you feel about that word. It's cool to you. I get it. Yeah, you trying to use it as a term of endearment or to relate to me, but I'm not that. I don't want to be that, because the reality is that to be that is to be ignorant, to be docile, to be childlike. I'm educated, college educated, right? First person in my immediate family to ever get to obtain a college education. And I'm very, very proud of that. And so much so that I've been able to break that generational curse, and both of my children have college degrees at this point in time. So what do I look like talking to somebody and throwing that word around just haphazardly, right? I don't even like anything that has to do with that. Now, don't get me wrong. If it's used in the context of a music, if a black person singing along to a song, or they're quoting some lines from one of our favorite urban movies or whatnot, I don't think that they should censor themselves. But again, that's the art form, right? That's art imitating life. But on a day-to-day basis, communicating with other people, using that word interchangeably as homie, friend, my brother, all that, that's not what it is. And it makes us look stupid. I've actually been in a place where I was just an observer. I'm on the outside looking in, and I see two black people talking, using that word in public, and I just watched the room, or I just watched the whole environment, and everyone that walked by that wasn't black, whether they were Asian American, whether they were Native American, whether they were Hispanic, whether they were white, when they see two black people using that word towards each other out in public, like, they still have the same response. It's still like, what the hell? See, this is exactly like they claim that they want to be looked at different. They claim that they want to be able to come out of the yokes and the stereotypes and the microaggressions that have been heaped on them, but they can't help but to still play around in the same filth that they claim that is a burden when somebody else does it, right? I've saw it time and time again. And I've even saw this. I've seen when someone outside the black community uses that word without having a pass from somebody, guess what happens? I done seen people literally get punched in the face for saying that word in the wrong context, meaning that you're a non-black person saying that to a black person, or saying it, even trying to use it as a term of endearment, just using it in the everyday flippant way because it's on the commercials, not necessarily the commercials, but it's in the videos, it's in the music, it's in the movies. And so you figure, hey, I got black friends, you know what I'm saying? One or two let me say that, they called me that. And so they say it, and guess what happens? All of a sudden there's beef. All of a sudden there's an issue. All of a sudden there's an uproar. There's a problem. And especially if it's something that's caught on camera, then black folks is passing this all along through social media. Like, look how they treat us. Look how they view us, right? We've been out of the yokes of slavery since 1865, and they still treating us like we're ends. No, they see us treating ourselves like ends. And so now they say, you know what? Hey, man, let's just follow suit. If they don't got no self-respect, if they don't feel as if this is something that's terrible, and they say it to each other, and they say it with a smile on their face, they give each other dab, they give each other pounds, they give each other hugs while they saying that, they point to each other, you my end, right? Think of what that transmits to non-black people, right? It either creates this complete controversial thought, like, why is it that you feel like you can say it, but if I say it's a problem? Or, in all honesty, they probably be like, see, I knew it. Can't give these guys the benefit of the doubt. Like, look at how they treat each other. That's the first thing that gets thrown in our face whenever we decide, some of us decide, man, we want to step up and advocate for, a change in our community. The first thing they say is, well, why are you talking about the systems of oppression that supposedly are keeping you guys down, when all we see is you guys keeping each other down, right? That particular thing just goes unnoticed, right? Or it gets dismissed, right? And then there's the second part, right? There are some people that are within the segments of our black community that feel like, hey, if they have a white friend or an Asian friend or a Hispanic friend, what have you, Native American friend, right? And they're cool with them. And because they do everything together, if they hear them say that word, they say, oh, no, it's cool. You can use it between you and I. That's what the term past came from, right? When somehow a black person had the ability to have this fictitious social contract pass that they could pass along to a non-black person that says that, hey, as long as you in the company of me, or as long as you let people know that you're not racist, you have black friends, it's okay, it's acceptable for you to say that word, at least in my presence, right? That creates this false ideology from non-black people that it's okay to say it under certain context, right? But again, they find out real quick. Bam, you say it in front of the wrong person, what happens? Punched in the face. And then there's this third element that I want to add to it that further convolutes and muddies this whole thing and has everyone scratching their head like, what the helly, right? You have black people getting upset or talking to non-black people, calling them the N-word. And that causes people to say, what are you talking about, right? It just blows my mind when I hear that, right? And so what I see is a black person pissed off, mad, angry with a non-black person and calling them the N-word the same way they would call someone that looks like them the N-word. And sometimes if you look real close, you'll see that little bit of glaze in a person's eye and a lot of confusion, right? Especially if they hear it for the first time. They're like, What? I've seen, again, black folk get upset talking that talk, street talk, whatever it is, urban language slang, and they get mad and they call someone that's non-black the N word in the course of either cussing them out or trying to flex their muscle, let them know, hey, you don't know who I am, you can get it right. And I see it's specifically black, white people looking at like, just for that split second, like, wait, what's going on here? What's going on, right? So at all three bases and all three phases of the usage of this word, right, it's completely contradictory. I can't come up with one argument for why a black person or anyone else should use a word that was absolutely created, right, to denote a time period and a mental capacity that they created within black men, women, and children, in which they promulgated throughout the whole society, especially in the antebellum South, and that they fostered and got black people to believe that all they could be was ignorant, right? That they could not achieve things, that because they didn't have access to education and couldn't read and write, that the only kind of language they could use was broken English language, particularly slang and broken English, right? And so I talk to my students sometime and I say, listen, it would have blown your mind if you could walk around in 1826 or 1825, especially in the South, right? You would see someone my age, a man my age, walking around. And if you try to have a conversation with him, you would find out real quick that this conversation level would be very, very childlike, right? The person, especially if you weren't a person of color, would probably not even look you in the eyes, right? We were ground and demoralized into such a bad and negative frequency that when a 48-year-old black man came in the company or in the midst of an 8-year-old white kid, he had to look down, afraid to even look him in the eye, right? And had to talk in a very, very passive way. You hear him say stuff like, "I don't know, boss. I sorry. All I know is this." Imagine that. You see a 48-year-old black man talking to an 8-year-old boy with that level of deference, right? And with that type of worry and concern. That was the context and that was the environment that our forefathers, black forefathers and foremothers had to navigate through, right? And once they obtained an education, one of the first things that happened is that they started to shake off all of that old dialect and shake off all of that old childish language and start speaking like an intelligent human being. Because again, we have the mental capacity to be very, very articulate as long as it's learned. Articulation is typically a learned behavior, right? And so if what we've learned in the last 40 years is that we can take a word and strip away all of the negative aspects of it, take away all the toxicity, take away all the venom, take away all the hurt, all the pain, all the vitriol, right? All the historically wrong elements of that, and then throw it around at one another as a term of endearment. Then the way that we would be able to demonstrate that we had moved on and that we had changed the power dynamic of that word is that we wouldn't at all get upset if anyone else outside of our race or ethnicity used it. But we know in 2025, that's not the case. We know real fast that you can still go out to any urban environment and you can just do a nice little what are those things they call when they do they go out and they troll and they prank. You can go out and do a whole little prank series. You take an Asian American, take a Native American, take a Hispanic person, take a white person, take them into an urban environment and let them start singing the words to a black song, a rap song that has the N word all throughout it. And they're saying it around all black people. I guarantee it will not be looked at as a term of endearment. They will know immediately that that is not an appropriate response in that context. Yet you take someone that is black or someone that's mixed that has black ancestry and you have them say that in those same contexts and it's not an issue, right? That's the paradox in it. And that's why I chose to stop saying that word. It's been well over a decade, maybe close to 15 years. And I'm so happy that I stopped using that word. It's so venomous. It's so poisonous. It's such a bondage marker to our heritage that I just want to stay as far away from that as possible. Now, don't get me wrong. Like I said, I just want to circle back to circumstances where I feel like, within a true context, it can be used. If you're in your car and you're riding along and you're listening to a rap song that has that word and you're a black person, I would think that it would be very odd and probably asinine for you to just bleep that out yourself if you're just singing along to yourself. But I wouldn't advocate for having your windows down, pulling up to some other parked cars or some other cars at a stoplight and just be saying that word out your window, right? Then again, now it's pushing us back into those years of being docile and being ignorant, right? And so when I think about it, I wish that no one would use that word. Like if we just retired that word, if we were like, you know what, as creative as black folk are, as many different terms of endearment we've developed, if we can have that stick, if we can teach that to our kids, right? If we can pass some of those down that we actually decided for ourselves is an acceptable term that we can use back and forth with one another, and we can allow other people that want to participate in our subcultural norms, they can use that word and it doesn't have that kind of connotation to it. It doesn't have that historical context to it. I think we should do that. Right. And so what I did was I replaced what I felt is like the lowest word that could ever come out of a black person's mouth with one of the highest value words, right, which is king, right? King in a feudal society was the top of the totem pole, right, for lack of a better metaphor. And so when I come across black men, I refer to them as king. It's not to say that they're a king and they're lording over, some fictitious kingdom. It's just a psychological retraining of my mind that says instead of meeting and greeting somebody with one of the worst things that could be said about someone that looks like us, let me go ahead and say something that can elevate and exalt him to the highest level of importance. Right. And so that's just my way of being able to shake myself and free myself from the contradiction. But I just wish that somehow we can come across as a community and as a culture and say, let's just go ahead and move this out of our everyday sayings, right? Or out of our everyday interactions. Then we won't have to worry about the others that want to participate and want to, play around in blackface, in modern day. We can remove that from their options of, how to interact with us, right? So to sum it all up, my personal opinion is that the N word is way more of a hindrance to us historically, emotionally, psychologically, intellectually than it is a help to us. It is not a term of endearment. I don't accept when someone says that word towards me. It doesn't matter what the color of their skin is. It doesn't matter what their ethnic background is. It doesn't even matter what their intent is. I always stop them and check them on that immediately. Like, hey, that might be cool with you, but please do not refer to me as that. I'm not that. You'll never have to worry about me saying that about you. If you hear me running around using the N word, trust and believe I'm like at the end and I've snapped and everybody in the vicinity better duck, right? And I try to stay cool, calm, and measured, right? So that's not something that's going to happen in my immediate future. And so I'm not worried about it. I'm being a little facetious. But the thing is that I just want to drive home, start thinking about how you move, right? Start thinking about what kind of things have been placed in you ethnically, right? Think about what kind of things have been placed in you culturally, right? And see if they align with exactly who you are and how you register as a person. If you are an ignorant person and you have no problem, no qualms whatsoever, and you think that everyone around you is ignorant and docile and childlike, then it might be appropriate for you to use that word in that context. But I don't think that people think about it that way. I think that we try to use these high ideals and go around it, and we try to smooth out and finesse this thing into something that it's not. It's not a term of endearment. It's not a fraternal word. It's not a word that genuinely makes black folks feel like we are all part of the same gang, right? It's something that's used situationally, habitually, that's used out of context, and most of the times is used out of the mouths of someone that is ignorant. So that's the sad part. people that are using that word are displaying a certain level of ignorance, right, in public, right? And so if you don't want to be looked at or viewed as being ignorant, then you shouldn't do ignorant things. And I just refuse to have someone convince me that we have somehow taken this word and reshaped it, right, and commandeered it and turned it into something different. We're just taking our power back from the white society, right? We're taking this word that was actually created to keep us in a particular mind state, and now we flipped it around to where it's something that makes us feel proud. Like if you feel proud of being a real N, then I would say you're definitely taking us in the wrong direction. So just think about it. Words have power. There's intention in a word, whether you understand it or not. And so if you're one of those people that still use that word, just kind of think about it. Like do a little self inventory. Why is it that you feel it's necessary and okay to use this word? And if you don't associate it and attach it to how it was originally constructed, then ask yourself, do you still get mad when it's used by someone outside of our race? If you're one of those people that say anybody can say it, don't matter to me, it don't bother me, I say it, they say it to me, right? You just happen to be an exceptional individual, and God bless you. But for most of us, we're living in a walking contradiction if we use that word outwardly and convince ourselves or try to convince others that it doesn't have that same historical sting that it was created with. The ingredients within that word do not leave, right? They don't change. Maybe your taste buds change, but those ingredients still are the same, and they have the same potency that they've always had. All right, well, that's my first one. Thank you for tuning in to Off the Record, right, but on my mind. Look forward to hearing from you all, hearing feedback. Give me some more ideas about things to just talk about, just shoot the breeze about. As this thing unfolds, I will be bringing other people on to talk with, dialogue back and forth with. I think it'd be very interesting to be able to share perspective on things. But until the next time, go ahead and just think about what I just said. Ask yourself, where you weigh in on it. Hit me in the comments. Send me something on Facebook. Send me something on Instagram. Let me know how you feel about it. Until the next episode.